Hello, still July 8th, 2015. Last video, I reviewed a bunch of Spider-Man books. In this video, I'm reviewing a bunch of DC books, many of which involve Batman, because DC really likes Batman. But we're starting with the book that doesn't have any Batman at all, All-Star Section 8, issue number 2. And I guess in a nutshell, the most I can say about this book is that it's incredibly weird. It takes the surreality, whatever, of comic books and just pumps it to 11, just takes it to 11 to a point where it's like just too surreal, too ridiculous almost. This book starts with the origin story for Dog Welder, who is a character that welds dogs to other things, and it's very much like The Mask, the old Jim Carrey movie, also based on a comic book, by the way. But where this guy just finds a welding mask in a thrift shop and begins welding dogs to other things uncontrollably. And then we completely abandon that little origin story for the main story, which involves, again, Six-Pack trying to find an 8th member for Section 8, because it's called Section 8, but right now they only have 7 members. In the last and first issue, he tried to recruit Batman, who kind of weirded out and took a taxi away. And in this issue, he tries to recruit Green Lantern. And the book only gets weirder from here. We're dealing with a team where at least 3 of the people don't say anything or say near nothing except their own names. We have Bader, who in the first issue said, "I am Bader," the whole time, and in this issue, she or he seems to be switching to French. I'm not even going to try bother. Okay, I'll try once to pronounce it. Je m'appelle Bator. And then we have the Grappler, who just says the Grappler a bunch. It's almost to the point where it reminds me of the mysterious ticking noise from Potter Puppet Pals, where you just have all the Harry Potter puppet characters say their names a bunch. And that's basically all those characters do. The third character that says nothing but his name is Bueno Excelente, who just says Bueno and Excelente a whole bunch. They're basically Pokemon. But then we have Six-Pack's great idea to recruit Green Lantern, which is that they are going to join the Green Lantern Corps. And when I read that, my mind immediately flipped to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And I just imagine the title card in my head, the gang joins the Green Lantern Corps. And that's pretty much, the story kind of plays out like an Always Sunny episode, actually, where you just have the entire team in Green Lantern shirts utterly failing to become Green Lanterns and attract the attention of Hal Jordan. Also involves a lot of puking, and one of the characters getting dressed in a very kind of slutty costume. And it's guts. Just the pile of guts is the one that eventually gets the sexy costume. Yeah, this is just a very weird book, and I can't quite tell if I'm enjoying it. It's just incredibly out there. We also have the follow-up where Six-Pack tries to return the Green Lantern shirts and the sexy costume to the store he bought it from, while completely ignoring the fight in the background between Green Lantern and this robot space Tyrannosaurus, who we're later called, or at least who Hal Jordan later calls the Tyrannofucker Prime, which is a great name. before immediately, kind of like Batman in the last issue, hopping in a cab and exiting the comic, and that's where the comic ends. It's just really surreal. It's just an incredibly surreal book. Things just sort of happen out of nowhere. The characters have an internal logic. Like, you can follow the logic of this book, and the plot of this book very simply, but everyone's insane and crazy and nuts. No one behaves like they're supposed to, which actually fits in a lot with some of the other books I'll be talking about in this video. Yeah, it's just a very weird book, and I really, it's hard for me to recommend unless you like really weird things. Again, I can't even tell myself if I'm enjoying it. I mean, I'm laughing at certain bits, so I think I am. I don't know if it's a sort of book that you're supposed to enjoy in the traditionals. It's weird. I'm gonna keep on reading it though. Next up, we have Justice League of America #2, and this is a book I'm also going to keep reading, but just to see how the train wreck ends, which isn't a great reason to start or continue to read anything. But this book, honestly, it's just awful, which is made worse because it has an interesting premise for the arc. The premise being that Rao, the Kryptonian god, has come to Earth and is seemingly making everything better. Through this book, he cures everybody sick in the world. Like, from cancer, from everything else, he's just curing all these people. We don't know if he has an ulterior motive yet. Batman seems to think so, because Batman always thinks there's an ulterior motive. Superman, meanwhile, has just gone completely off the deep end, religious fanatic for this guy. Immediately kind of was like, oh yeah, this is Rao, this is my god, and I trust him 100% because he's God. And even Superman kind of questions this, considering he never knew Rao because he didn't grow up on Krypton. I mean, he probably knows of Rao from like the Fortress of Solitude and all the crystals and whatever, but he was never religious in that sense. So it's weird that suddenly he's super religious. And also the art in this book is really good at some points. So we have this like nice pedo shot here of Rao holding a depowered Superman. What's another really good? Yeah, like all the lighting effects in this book are great. You have like the introduction of Rao. What's another great panel? Let me find it. You have this panel of Rao's church, his spaceship hovering over New York City. This is a really pretty book. It's a shame that like so much of it doesn't work though. I mean, one of the biggest personal grievances I have is we have a newspaper article written by Lois Lane in this book that reads nothing like a newspaper article should read. I mean, it's not good writing either way, even if it weren't pretending to be a newspaper article, but that it proclaims to be a newspaper article and doesn't follow any standards or guidelines of a newspaper article is really upsetting to me personally, as someone who enjoys newspapers. We also have incredibly out-of-character Batman. Just insultingly out of character. Where's the panel where that is? Yeah, over here. We have an insultingly out-of-character Batman. I'm just going to read what he says. In response to Alfred saying how Rao is healing everybody no matter how sick or injured, Bruce responds, yes, everybody, good and bad. Thieves, criminals, worse. The world would be better if they died as they were supposed to? What kind of church gives evil a second chance? Like, it reads like a parody of Batman, almost. Gods, Alfred, we have a poor history, them and me. Who was God being kind to when my parents were murdered? If Joe Chill were dying, I'd fight every single one of the prophets to stop them from saving him. It's like, this isn't Batman. Batman is about second chances. He gave Jason Todd a second chance when he caught Jason Todd robbing his car. He gave Jason Todd tons of second chances. He gives a lot of the criminals in Arkham second chances, like Mr. Freeze, Two-Face. He always repairs Two-Face's face in the hopes that's a key to making him better. Like, Bruce Wayne loves second chances. He builds he builds homeless shelters and schools and puts tons of money into Arkham to rehabilitate criminals. Batman likes second chances. He's about curing people, not... Yes, he punishes them, but he punishes them in the name of justice. And he doesn't kill them because he believes that they can be cured. Batman is someone where second chances are part of his motivation. They're part of his character. How do you have a Batman that doesn't believe in second... I just don't get it. And, yeah, it's like insultingly bad, but it's interesting enough where I want to see this turn into a train wreck, which is not a good reason to read a book. It is an reason to read a book, or a reason to read a book, rather. But, yeah. Way out of character, a lot of these things. There's, like, besides just the main conceit of this book, Rao comes to Earth, there's also interesting things regarding Rao interacting with Superman. Superman acknowledges that he didn't grow up on Krypton and shouldn't really be this fanatical about Rao, and Rao brings up how he's come to Earth to kind of beg Clark for forgiveness for abandoning Krypton, which reads kind of like a parallel to the story of Exodus. In the Old Testament, Exodus is kind of God's way of hoping the Jews take him back after God abandoned the Jews and let them become slaves to the Egyptians. And you have kind of a Descartesian idea of God imprinting his image onto everybody, and that's why Superman believes in God or knows Rao to be a true God. Like, it's not something he has to question because he just knows it to be true because Rao imprinted that on him. Like, there are interesting ideas in this book. I'm sure a lot of them are not intentional or not fully intentional in the way I'm perceiving them. But, yeah, it's... I guess, like I said, it's interesting enough where I want to see it turn into a train wreck. So that's Justice League of America. After this arc, I'll probably abandon it. But for this arc, I kind of want to see where it goes. Next up, we have Batman Superman, issue 22. And this is a book that begins okay, that begins kind of strong, and immediately, like at a certain point, and it's very clear what point that is, becomes incredibly dumb incredibly quickly. Like on a dime. Like there is a word, and after that word is uttered, the entire comic becomes super dumb, in my opinion. But we begin where we left off, with depowered Superman fighting a new Batman. As of yet, Clark does not know who this new Batman is, and Jim, for some reason, still doesn't trust Superman. We're dealing with a character who trusted Batman before anybody else did, even though Batman was a vigilante circumventing the law. Jim Gordon trusted him, and now Jim Gordon doesn't trust Superman, even after all that Superman has done to protect the world. Still doesn't really make sense as a character decision, but if they're going to keep on going with this, I guess I just have to take it at this point. But we have a fight scene that's interrupted by Superman basically deciding, you know what, no, there's bigger issues out here, we should team up to fight this bigger issue, which is what Superman should do. Like, that's good. You know, avoiding the fight in order to team up against a bigger threat that's actually threatening people. That's very in character. So Superman and Batman decide to investigate this. I mean, Superman kind of twists Batman's arm into it, but they eventually go to Gotham to Wayne Tech to fight the barbarians stealing things from last issue. It's kind of forget. But this is the page where everything goes to shit. This panel, the speech bubble, in fact, right here. So as you can see, there's kind of a miniature glowy thing in this, or a big glowy thing in this panel, and I'm going to read what that refers to. It's a miniature sun. One of our scientists obtained some unauthorized Star Labs text and birthed it here by accident 2 years ago. An accident? That word accident is where the entire comic becomes just dumb. If you don't know, creating a sun is something that's referred to in the real world as fusion, as nuclear fusion. It's something scientists have been trying to do for decades. It would solve all sorts of power crises on Earth. Basically, free infinite energy if we could recreate a sun and harness that power. In this comic book, a scientist accidentally did this 2 years ago, and it's been a whole secret. Like, they haven't really continued development on it or anything. They've been trying to hide it from the public because it could, like, go nuclear and destroy things, which is understandable. But this isn't something you do accidentally, and if it is, it's something you try to improve and work on, not keep a secret. It's just so dumb. And then we actually have the main threat appear, the barbarians, who turn out to be OOC from the underground civilization that appeared in Greg Pak's Action Comics a few story arcs ago. It was a pretty good story arc if you could find it. They're making a reappearance. They want revenge on Superman for destroying their way of life by getting rid of the orbs that were created from power harnessed from innocent people, or innocent creatures, rather. So I haven't read that arc. A lot of this book probably would be a bit hard to follow. But the actual fight scene here is dumb. I mean, it gets better. There's some good moments where you have Superman forcing this guy, the other guy, to try and talk things out. But then you have Batman come in and just ruin everything by stabbing the villain in the back. Which, I mean, like, Superman calls him out on. Like, there's enough of this book that's being called out on the stupid moments where I think Greg Pak realizes it, but I don't know. I mean, I trust Greg Pak. He's been a good writer in the past. This could just be kind of a weak story for him, especially because this seems to be interlocking with a lot of other Superman stories, and we still don't have the full story on everything right now. Yeah. There's some parts of this book I just think are really dumb and that fall apart, but there's enough of this book that people are acting as they're supposed to, or as I expect them to be acting, and there are things being done, people in character, so maybe it's just a weak single issue. I don't know. But I'm gonna keep reading, find out, see next issue if things improve, because last issue was pretty good too. So yeah, I don't know what to say exactly. And the last DC book this week is Batman 42, a book which I really liked, actually. We're continuing the adventures of Jim Gordon getting used to his new role as Batman. And in this issue, Batman gets a car. We open on a different thing, but second page is Jim Gordon training to become Batman. He's throwing batarangs, and he complains to Julia that he doesn't have a Batmobile. How can a Batman exist without a Batmobile? And luckily enough, they have a Batmobile planned out for him. It's a truck. The new Batmobile is a truck. Batmobile, Bat Optimus Prime, I guess. Optimus Bat Prime. I'm not going to even bother. So yeah, new Batmobile. It's a truck. And then Batman is immediately summoned to a new threat. Like in the last issue, this threat is a crime boss in the Narrows who inexplicably has superpowers. And this guy's superpower is to manipulate silicate, which basically means that he can turn the city into a weapon. Everything, all sorts of building materials, he can manipulate and throw around and all that, turning the city into a weapon, which is kind of a fun play on that old kind of Batman thing where Batman supposedly uses the city for a weapon, or at least Bruce Wayne Batman knew the city enough so well that he can manipulate it in a way. He can play to the city's strengths or use the city to cover up his weaknesses as Batman and play to his own strengths. And this, like, the villain literally is using the city as a weapon against Batman. So you got some thematic things going on there. Then here is actually like just a really good illustration of that. Batman, the villain turns into a giant Batman statue thing that Jim Gordon has to fight against. We then get a small flashback. Jim Gordon in the morgue, discovering that the villain he brought in last issue suddenly died. And this sets up Mr. Bloom, who will be the villain in the next issue of Batman. Apparently his gimmick is that he's giving all of these mob bosses superpowers. He's giving them all a seed that he sews into their ankle. The seed gives them a superpower, but then kills them. So, bit of a trade-off. And the villain in this book is, of course, another one of Mr. Seed's crime bosses that he gave superpowers to. And Mr. Bloom, rather, not Mr. Seed. Jim Gordon eventually does end up beating this villain, and the villain dies before he can bring him in this time. And Jim beats this villain by throwing the new Batmobile on top of him, which is... like, I like it. I actually do like that. You have this ridiculous new Batmobile, and Jim Gordon's like, no, I'm just going to use it as a weapon. Single-purpose weapon Batmobile. I really like it. Also, kind of really ties in well with Batman Arkham Knight, the new video game, where the whole kind of setup to the game was, you have the Batmobile now, like, be the Batman, use the Batmobile, and if you watch my review of that game, the Batmobile was more of a liability than a useful tool in that game. So just coming off that game where Batman was defined by the Batmobile, and the comics like, no, he's not. Just get rid of the Batmobile. Boom, use it, single use. That's all you need. And yeah, I think that fit really well, just in context of the game there. And then we close this issue by catching up with Bruce Wayne, of all people, who isn't dead. Who knew? Who could have called it? Bruce Wayne isn't dead. Instead, he seems to be working at a school or some sort of shelter that Duke Thomas, the kid who Batman rescued in Endgame, is staying at. Duke Thomas also being the protagonist of We Are Robin. Still not clear how that's supposed to fit together, if it is quite yet. And, yeah, catching up with them, seeing what Bruce is doing now that he is revealed to be alive. And the book ends on Bruce running into Jim Gordon, who admits that he is Batman, and he wants to talk to Bruce Wayne. Which is a great place to end the issue, Finally having the two Batman face-to-face. It's unclear if Jim Gordon knows Bruce Wayne used to be Batman. I think it's pretty strong to say that he does. So yeah, that's what's going on. Two Batmen finally come together face to face. Another really good, strong issue, 42nd strong issue in Scott Snyder's Batman run. If you're not reading this book and enjoy Batman, even if you are a little thrown off by Batman not being Bruce Wayne, I still heavily recommend it. Very fun Batman book. And that is it for the DC books for this week. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to watch my review of Marvel's books that I picked up this week, which are all Spider-Man books, that is in part 1 to this video. And if you're interested in seeing the non-Marvel or DC books that I picked up this week, that'll be coming up shortly in the next part of this week's reviews. So yeah, and I hope you like it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Any comments, questions, anything whatsoever, feel free to leave them below. If you want more of these, please subscribe. And thank you for watching, and hope you will join me for other comic book reviews.